We are now officially starting our backend development journey. Now, in backend development, we are going to spend most of our time writing code. This course is going to be different than your JavaScript and front-end development course. There, I used animated presentations and analogies to explain you behind the scenes stuffs. But to be honest, if you have completed my JavaScript course, I can assure you in backend we don't have much complicated topics that can confuse you that needs to be addressed using presentations and analogies because deep down we will be writing JavaScript itself. Remember, in the intro of this course I explained you how Node is just a JavaScript runtime. And also, you must be remembering that in my JavaScript course, I specifically told you that I have curated this course by keeping future in mind. So you don't have to repeat all those steps again and again. Indeed, I don't have to repeat explaining all those steps in every course that is somehow related to backend development and JavaScript specifically because JavaScript is a must. If you want to understand React, you need to learn JavaScript. You want to understand Angular, Vue, the base is JavaScript. That's why I had told you I have developed my JavaScript course in such a way that you don't have to get confused in understanding the mechanism. You understand JavaScript once, your base is completely strong. Now you can pick up on backend, front end. Maybe you can also do React Native app development. I cannot promise you, but in future we may be taking our hands on React Native app development. But future, who has seen it? So in Node.js, we have very limited steps that can confuse you. So for that, I will definitely be creating presentations to explain those. Other than most of the time we are going to spend writing code because that is the main purpose of this course. Okay, now we are going to start our backend journey by understanding about module system. I could have straightly explained you Express.js, NPM, but no, I want to start from complete basics. So the first thing that we are going to talk about is modules. And here I have also written a notes.txt. You can ask me what is this? Well, you can read this. I don't want you to manually write notes on your notebook because again in backend we don't have much steps that is worth taking note, very limited steps, and when I will feel like that you should take note, I will tell you. Okay, other than that, whenever I will be creating a new folder, yeah, I almost forget to mention that I have created a new folder called backend updated, dragged and dropped right here, and here we have 01 all about modules folder. So whenever I will be teaching you a new topic, I will be creating a new folder. So when I will give you the final file, it will be easy for you to navigate, okay, between different topics that we are going to cover in this course. So the first one is all about modules. This also contains a notes.txt where I have written a very simple note that you can open and revise. So yeah, we are going to talk about modules. You can ask me what are modules? Well, modules are different types of files that contains different functionality. Okay, isn't that very easy to read? Yeah. In Node, we have three types of modules. Actually, in backend, we just have three types of module. One is Node's core module, our own modules, and then global NPM modules. Now you can say, whoa, wait. First, explain me what is modules. Then explain me what is Node's core module, how can we create our own modules, and what the heck is this global NPM modules? I don't understand all of this. Okay, let's start from bare basics. Read this region. It says, our files can easily grow large upon writing a lot of code, and to manage these code in a proper way, we can leverage the functionality of modules in our project. So let me give you a very simple example of why modules are very important for us to understand, and with this example, everything will be crystal clear and you will understand the requirement and best uses of modules. So let's assume that we are developing a very complex website that can do multiple things, or maybe let's assume that we are just developing the next big giant social media. So here I'm going to create a new folder well, this is not a folder but rather a file. So right here I will say outline.txt. okay, now a social media consists of views. Views simply means, well, views will be crystal clear when we will talk about express. There I will explain you what is views. But views is simply a directory where we keep all of our templates. Okay, templates. Now other than views we will have database connections, we will have login routes, password routes, and then we will have maybe reset password. Yeah, why not, because you need to develop the functionality of reset password, right? And then you will have route to deliver notifications and many routes. I mean hundreds of thousands of routes just for creating new templates again and again for hundreds of millions of users, right? So yeah, you are going to have a lots and lots of files. But again, why? So let me tell you, if I create a very simple file, I will call it my social media.js. This is my main file. This entire file is my main file. Now let's imagine that we are writing all of our code in this single file, which is my social media.js. This is the only file that is ever going to execute on our server, which means that we will end up having thousands of lines of code, or thousands is very less, millions of lines of code in one single file. This is the only file where we are going to have the views directory, views logic for views. The database logic will also go here, database logic, database connection logic will be here, and then here we are going to have probably very complex routing, so hundreds of routes, and then the logic for reset password, and then what else do we have? We have notifications. So yeah, the code for notifications as well. Now all of this is a very separate task, and to do all of these separate tasks you are going to have separate engineers and separate team dedicated to each of these. So someone from front end will be managing views, someone from back end will be managing database, and again routes is very complex, so even front end can manage, and back end engineers can also manage. Reset password can be managed by back end engineers, and notifications can also be managed by back end engineer. But again, the crux of this example is that we are going to have different files with different use cases. Now if you write all of the code in one single file, this will very soon become complex and it is impossible to manage. Okay, and so that's why what we do is we create different files and we separate our logic in that file, which means that we are going to have a new file for database connections.js. And then here we are going to do all of our database connections. So here I'm going to cut this line and I will say here I'm doing database connections, and then for routes we are going to have another routes.js, and here all of our routing related tasks will be performed. Similarly, we are going to have different modules where logic for login will be written, logic for password will be written, and logic for reset password will be written, as well as logic for notifications will be written. The reason why we would be doing this is separate teams can work on all of these separate directories at different time. So we wouldn't be touching this main file. No, this main file is going to live isolate. We are going to do all of our work in different files. This main file will only contain all of the important files that will be loaded directly on the server using this file. Okay, but other than that we are going to use different modules. So deep down all of these files are nothing but just a module. So the next time if in interview the interviewer asks you that what is a module, just tell them that module is a separate file that contains a more slightly reasonable logical code that has its own functionality. And so if you read this last statement, it clearly says that, and to manage this code in a proper way, we can leverage the functionality of modules in our project. So let's now see all three types of modules one by one. So Node's core modules. Again, module is just a piece of code that has its own separate logic. Okay, so Node by default provides us few modules that we can use in our project. One such module that I vividly remember is the file system module. So file system module helps us to access the file system of the software, is a wrong term, of the hardware of this operating system. So by using file system module, you can access some files, you can create data, you can append some data in those files and do a whole lot of things using the file system module. So let's now understand how to use Node's core module. Now, I am experienced developer in backend development. You are not. You may be not. You may be experienced, but I'm assuming that you are a beginner. So how do we actually learn about these all sorts of stuffs? I'm experienced. You're a beginner. How are you going to learn? Documentations, my friend, documentations. So I want to bring your attention to the Node.js official docs. Just make a search for nodejs.org and then click this docs. It will navigate you to this window. Here in the left side, you can see whole sorts of modules. These are all modules. So DNS, domain, errors, events. Don't worry, you don't have to, learn about all of these modules. Very rarely we use all of these modules. Very few of them are always used, but not all of them, okay? And one particular module that I just talked about is the file system module. And one more I can see is the OS module. OS module simply means operating system module. Well, which one should I use to explain? Well, let's use both, okay? So let's first understand what is OS module. Click here, it will bring you to the actual documentation. So if you read, it says the Node.js, the Node OS module provides operating system related utility methods and properties. It can be accessed using this thing. So first, what you have to do is whenever you use module, you have to require it in your script. And here is the required code. So first you have to declare a variable and then use this require function and then require this module. So the module is very simple, the name of the string itself. Other than without requiring, you cannot use these modules, because then how would the script know that, hey, we are about to be using a particular set of module? No, right? So whenever you are using a module, you need to load it first. So first I'm going to create, I will say here, I'll say node way.js. Okay, so module system. Okay, I'll say nodes module. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to require. So I'm going to say const OS. OS stands for operating system. Using this require function in this string format, I'm going to write node : OS and then semicolon. Semicolon in JavaScript is optional. If you want to provide, if you want to skip, you can skip it. Okay, so node const OS equals to require node : OS. Now if you say OS dot, you are going to have a bunch of methods that you can use to access the operating system's details. So here you can read about it. EOL, the operating system specific end of line marker. What does each methods do? Constants, cpus. It's been a while since I've used it. Let's home directory, host name. Let's use host name. Returns the host name of the operating system as a string. So if I call host name, and you'll have to call it because it is a method, and now all you have to do is you have to say, well, what did I do? Const OS, we need to store this in a variable. I will say OS data equals to os.hostname. So now if I console.log os data, so first of all we have to, well, what did I do? I created this node way outside of this folder. So let's drag and drop it here. Come on, hit enter, because I want each topic to be binded within their own folders. Okay, now if I say ls, now let's go inside this 01. So 01, hit tab to autocomplete. Remember, in terminal I have taught you all of this. And now if I say ls, we have all the files inside this folder, and the one we are interested to execute is this node way. So here we can just say node.js, hit enter, and now you can see OS data. So the data for operating system is code blocks MacBook Air. What is this dot local? I don't know, but yeah, this is the data. Okay, another method that you can use, this machine. Let's use this machine. What if I say machine? Let's see what output does it give to me. x86 underscore 64. I don't understand that. How about network interfaces? It's always good to do some manual operations right there. Wow. Family IPv6 MAC address. I mean, I have whole lots of data right here. Okay, probably I'll be blurring most of this data, but yeah, you can see it. Okay, these are private data that need not be exposed online, so I will be blurring this data. But yeah, you can see how this Node Core module helps us to access the operating system's data. Now another file system module, another module that I want to discuss is the file system module. So here in the left side I have this file system. Let's click it here, and let's click here. Come on, let's click, and now let's reload this. Now we have promises based reloading here, but we are not going to use this one because this is going to confuse you. I'm just taking it very easily. If you want slightly more advanced code for just requiring, you can use the ESM module. And now everything starts with import. I'm going to use the import syntax when I will be teaching you Express, but for now I'm just going to keep it very basics. Okay, so to use the callback and sync API, this one we are going to use. We are going to load the fs module. So this is how we load it. Const fs equals to require node colon fs, and now on fs we have a module, we have a method that is called as write file sync. Now what does write file sync does? Let's go down and try to read about it. So making a search will be good. Write file sync. Click here, write file sync. Okay, so this mode option only affects. Okay. What does it do? Okay, file and then data and then options. So first you can create a file. So we can give it a name to create a file, and then we can provide it a data, and then something is optional, mode flag plus encoding. Okay, so mode is UTF-8. Okay, so what we can do is here it takes two arguments. So the first one is the name of the file that you want to create. I already have two, so I'm going to create a file called data.txt, and then the data that you want this file to hold. So I'm simply going to say I am created using Node's Core module, and then it also receives a third argument that is optional. Here you can see it is already suggesting us options is data, a string, and Node.js array buffer view. So here you can read about it. So first one is the file. Okay, we already gave the name for the file, and then the data, and here this is options like what is the character encoding? Is it UTF-8? I've discussed about character encoding in my front end course. Okay, but now I'm not going to do the character encoding. I'm going to keep it very simple. Okay, and here we are going to store this into a variable. No, we don't have to do that because it is indeed a method call. So we just have to call this file. I'm going to save it. I'm going to execute this node.js and focus right here in this tree what do you call it, tree structure. Yeah, if I hit enter, you'll see one file will be created, data.txt. Upon opening, you can see I'm created using Node's Core module. Now let me tell you that if data.txt was already available, then data.txt's content would have been updated with this code. It would not again create the same file name. So if I say created again, do not expect another data.txt file. No, just these content will be overwritten. So if you save it and if I again execute it, you will see that now data.txt is updated, but we no longer see a new data.txt file. Okay, so this is a very simple Node's Core module. Now I want to discuss one thing, is that here you can see this is the acronym of file system. This is FS, right? But you are independent to call it anything. You can call it code system. There will be no problem at all, because deep down this is also a variable that is hosting everything that it is requiring from this Node's core module using the file system module, right? So this is the code system variable that has all the methods that is coming from this require function. So now to execute this write file sync, then you'll have to call this variable right here. So now fs no longer exists, so you'll have to use code system.write file sync. So this is also okay. There is no problem at all. Be comfortable whatever you want to name your variable with, okay? But in Node it's a convention to use acronym. So if it is file system, you just call it FS, because again let's not complicate things that need not be complicated, okay? So if it is FS, we can easily understand this stands for file system. But again, if you want to call it Captain Jack Sparrow, you can do that, but very rarely people do it, okay? So this is Node's core module. Now I'm going to give you a very simple challenge to create a new file, call it anything, and then append some data to it and probably play with it, maybe read about it, and if you are understanding any of this, then try to do some sorts of steps, okay? So yeah, this is Node's core module, how we utilize the Node's internal core module. So the next one is nodes.txt. So the next one is our own modules. Now before we move on and start to understand how to create our own modules, I want to take some time to explain you why it is very important for us to keep these docs open always when writing code. Well, the reason is you can very easily forget how a method or how a module actually works. Now the best thing is that if you are a very vivid memory reader like Sherlock Holmes, you can remember everything, but this does not happen in the case of all of the developers. So accessing docs and reading about these is very common. So whenever you are going to work in any company, you are always going to have official documents open right here. Even if they are a very experienced developer, maybe having experience of over 5 or 6 years, they will also be accessing these documents. So accessing these documents is not a bad thing, okay? Learn to read these docs. If I close this document, I can still work with file system, but this statement is valid for me because I am experienced in Node.js. I'm not a god in Node.js, but I am experienced. If you close this doc, I would still be able to use the file system module, but I cannot guarantee you that I will be able to use this cluster as well and this HTTP as well. No, I cannot guarantee you, because deep down I also need to access these documents. I cannot remember how all of these methods behave. How does this set header works? No, but if I read it, I will be able to use it. So it is a very common thing to have docs always open. So this is not something that we refrain from doing. No, always keep documents open and try to read it. It's not very complicated to understand, okay? Once you get hold of it, how these documentations are configured, life will become much more easier when you will be dealing with backend steps or any documentations. Even if you are learning React.js, which we will be learning after backend, I will introduce you to the React's official documentations. So you can read the docs by yourself, and then you can understand how a particular method or a function works. So this is very common, okay? Now you can see we have all sorts of methods, but trust me, in creating high-end apps, we never use all of these methods. Very rarely all of these methods are used. We may be using this OS module. I saw maybe connection somewhere. Let's check somewhere over here. Yeah, file system, very much used. HTTPS is used, module package is used, net used, OS used, path used. Yeah, process is quite frankly used, REPL is used, stream is used, but not all of these are used all at once. Okay, so don't get intimidated by looking at all of these methods like, oh, do I have to read about all of these methods, do I have to remember about all of these methods? No, this is not going to happen. You don't have to remember about all of these methods, neither you have to make notes out of it, or nor you have to read about all of them. Okay, just understand how a few of them works, and then you will be able to use most of them on your own. Again, no one is expecting you to become a high-end backend developer by just 1 or 2 months. No, eventually you are going to get there. Okay, so yeah, take it easily, don't worry much at all. So next up, we are going to understand about our own modules. In the last video, you learned how to use the required function to load in a node module. In this video, you are going to learn how to use the required function to load a module that you have created. So right now, the only file that is ever going to execute is the node.js file, because that is what we passed to the node command. That means we are gonna have to put everything in this single file if we want to run it, and that's not ideal. As our application gets larger and more complex, we are gonna have way more code that we would have in a single file. When all of our code sits in a single file, it makes the project really hard to expand on and maintain. So from the very start, we are gonna go ahead and create projects that use multiple files so we can stay organized. So we can do something like define a function in a very different file, then require it into the main file and use it. And that is exactly what we will end up doing in this lesson. So in this lesson, we are going to understand how to create our own modules and use it. So I have already closed all of the already used file, and now I'm going to create a new file. Okay, so I'm going to call it app.js. Well, make sure to create this file inside this folder. So the better thing is to right click on this folder and then new file. So app.js, and with this I'm going to create one more file, and I'm going to call it utils.js. So utils.js, this file will contain all of our important utilities that is going to be reused again and again throughout applications. So this file is going to have code that can be accessed by all of these files. So the entire media files, entire modules. Okay, so the files that will live here, they are going to be publicly available. Okay, so this is why we use modules. Now again, let me explain all of this in a very simple language. So first of all, I'm going to declare a my name variable, and I will call it code block, and I will say console.log. What happened? CL snippet not working. Yeah, and I will reference my name, and you pretty much know what is going to happen. App.js, we get code block. Very simple, right? Now here in this utils.js, I'm going to do a very simple console.log. I will say this is utils.js file. Okay, now if I save this, do you think that the data from utils.js will also be printed? No, because I'm executing node app.js. Now app.js is a single file that contains only this line of code. It does not contain any reference to utils.js. So right now, any data that is defined in utils.js, it is not going to be available to be used anywhere. Now what if I want to do it? Because of course I just told you that I want to keep data that is thoroughly used by any of the files. Well, for that we'll have to require this utils.js in this file. So how we can do that? Well, we can use this require function. I can say, hey, require, and now from here I can provide the relative path. So relative path is always provided by specifying one dot and then slash, and then here I can mention the name of the file. So now I have required utils.js in this app.js. So now the data of this utils.js will be available in app.js. So now if I execute app.js, Now you can see this is utils.js file coming from line 1 because this is the import, and we just have one console.log statement in utils.js. So this output is coming from utils.js file, and then we are getting our code block printed right here. Very simple, very easy to understand. Now let me tell you about this relative data path. Okay, so relative data is when you have multiple files sitting in same directory, and from one file you want to navigate to another file, you use this syntax // and then the name of the file. Okay, so the data that is in utils.js is now required right here. It is loaded in this app.js, and upon executing app.js we are retrieving utils.js data. Right, now this is a very simple example. Now let me try to make it little complex. I am cutting this variable and I am now pasting it right here. Now my name variable is no longer inside this app.js, but it is inside utils.js. Just for the sake of convenience, I'm going to change the name to Captain Jack Sparrow. Okay, where's the rum? And now I'm going to ask you, what do you think will happen if I execute app.js again? Do you think that now we will be able to print my name as well? Because I just mentioned, see, we required utils.js, which means upon requiring, we were successfully able to execute this statement. Do you think we will be successfully able to reference this my name in this app.js? So my name is a variable that is defined in utils.js, and we are trying to call it in app.js. So do you think that we will be able to get Captain Jack Sparrow printed in the console? Well, no. Let's check out. If I say app.js, we will get a reference error. My name is not defined. Now you can say, what is happening? So the reason is all of your files in Node.js that you call modules have their own scope with its own variables. App.js cannot access the variables from utils.js, even though it was loaded using this required function, but this is related to scoping. Both of these files have its own scope. You cannot access the scope of other file into a single file, into another file. Okay, now you can say, but I need this data. I need this data that we have defined here in app.js. How can I do that? See, the data that you are going to use, it is limited because of the scoping limitations, and we are unable to access the data. Right, now the question is, how can I access this data? Well, for this we can again leverage another functionality of module system, that is default export. We can explicitly define an export from a file, and then that export is available in any file where we can require it and use it. For example, if I want to use this my name, I can export this my name from this file, and then we will be able to use this my name variable anywhere. So how to do that? Well, for that you can say module.exports equals to my name. So now you have manually exported this my name variable, and now you can use this my name in this app.js. Okay, so now you are requiring utils.js. So the thing that you are requiring with this statement is the thing that you are exporting from here, which is name. So now you need to store this into a variable. So I'm going to call it a simple name. Okay, name. So this require statement is holding the return value from modules.export, which is this simple name. So we are exporting this my name variable. So this require function is now my name. So this my name, which indeed is Captain Jack Sparrow. Okay, so the reference of Captain Jack Sparrow. So now instead of my name, if you print this name, now if I cut this, if I now execute node.js, Captain Jack Sparrow. Did you see that? How this moduling worked? We manually exported my name, and now we are able to use it here. And now you can see we are also not limited to calling it my name. No, this is my variable. I can call it anything. I can call it imported data, because of course it is a imported data, right? Data is defined here, and we are importing a data that we are getting from this require function. So we can call it anything. We are not limited or we are not bounded to call it my name. So now here we are using imported data, and the moment we save it and we execute it, now we got our data back. So we learned two things. We defined a data in a different file and we exported it, and then we used it in a different file. Okay. So this is very simple exports with variables. Now what if I have a function? What if I have a function like add? I can say const add equals to x comma y, come on, return x plus y. How can I use this function in this app.js? Well, you can export this one as well. So now you can again say, well, what did I do? Is this one? Yeah. So now here I can say module.exports equals to add, and let's comment this out. So now we are exporting this add. So now this require function is no longer holding Captain Jack Sparrow, but this require function is holding the return value of this add. That means this variable name does not make sense. So here I can call it sum. Yeah, why not? Const sum. And now here I can say const, or maybe this is an add function, right? So I can call it add, because after all, what are we exporting? We are exporting add. So here I am going to call it add or add function. Again, you are independent to call it anything. So now I am going to create a variable called as sum, and now I can call this add function right here, and then I can provide this add some arguments like 30 and 20. Okay, and now when I will call this sum right here, you will see our function will give us 50. Let me explain you again. This time we are exporting a function which in return is adding the arguments provided. So this is parameter and this is argument. So what we did is we exported this add function. So now this require is holding this add function. Okay, so this add function, so this add function is getting the data from this add, which means now we can use this add function to call and get our sum. So that's why we created this variable and called this add function. And also the reason why we created this variable is this is a function expression. This is not a function declaration. So when you create a function expression, then you have to create a variable and then hold the return data in that, okay, in that variable. Again, this is JavaScript term, so I'm not going to get into much detail. Do watch the JavaScript lecture to understand all of this. By the way, this moduling is also covered in my JavaScript course, so I could have skipped this, but then I thought that in the context of Node.js, I haven't talked about modulings. So it is really important for me to talk about how we can create our own modules, import it, export it, and then we can leverage the functionality of modulings in backend development. So this is the reason why I chose to dwell into this topic again, just to clarify these things, okay? So this is our own modules. So right here, so our own modules, we created module right here. This is a code that can be used by any function. So for example, if you want to use this add function right here in my socialmedia.js, you can definitely do that. You can say const add function equals to require dot slash utils, right? And now you can say const add this equals to what are we getting? What are we getting from require? Yes, it is add. So I can say 20, 30, and now console dot log add this, and now we have to execute my social media. So node my socialmedia.js. You see, well, we are running into an error. It says add is not defined. This is add. What are we requiring? Utils.js. It should have been utils.js. Okay, we are still running into an error. It says add is not defined. So add this. Oh, this should have been add function. Extremely sorry. Add is getting exported from here, but here here we have given it a name of add function. So that is what we should call. Okay, so now we get 50. If you change this one to 200, it will give you 230. So see, we created one utils.js file. Here we are going to keep all of our possibly repeatable functions, and then all of these files are independent to use these functions. So that's why we called it utility.js. Okay, utils.js, to be specific, to be very specific. Okay, so next up that we have to understand is we have to understand about global npm modules. In the previous two videos, you learned to use Node's core modules and how to create our own modules and sync them. In this video, you are going to learn how to use the module system to load in npm packages. This is going to allow us to take advantage of all those awesome npm modules from right inside of our Node applications. There are an endless amount of awesome and amazing useful npm packages that we can install, so we don't have to recreate the wheel from scratch. Wait, what do I mean? Well, there are things that pretty much every application out there needs to do. For example, validating an email and maybe even sending an email. These are core functionality, not specific to what your application does for your users. If it is a social media app, it is definitely going to have a contact us page that your users can use to send an email to you, can contact you, and maybe they will be able to log in and reset their password, right? Once they log in, they will be able to access their account. The same can happen in case of a blog post as well, right? So these are very common functionalities. These are not like a mind-boggling thing that you are doing to your website. This is a very common functionality. So if we use npm modules to solve common problems, which is indeed the standard in the Node community, then we can focus our time and spend our developer time focusing on the awesome features that can make our app unique, right? So as I mentioned in the start of the course, when you install Node also installs one more module, which is npm. So if you say node-v, it will give you the current version of the node that is installed in your system. Similar to this, if you say npm-v, -v is the flag that we give to this npm command to check for this version. So if you hit enter, you'll get the current version of npm that comes with your current version of Node. Now in your case, it can be different. So the version name can be different, and that's totally okay, as the course will keep continuing to grow. And if I will make this node-v command again in the future, you will observe that I have updated my node to 20, and with that npm is also updated. So this is very common. We keep our packages and modules updated, right? So if your version is different, then it does not mean that it is not going to work. Chill and just continue the course. Now, how do we actually use npm to do the mentioned things? Well, the first thing that we have to do is npm is slightly different. In case of Node's core module, we simply took a module from Node and then we installed that. We required that somewhere here. So utils.js. Let me check that. Where did we do that? So maybe Node-way, yeah. So right here we imported the fs module directly from Node, right? But in case of npm, things are a bit different. Let me clear the terminal. You have to initialize an empty you have to configure an empty project with npm in it. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing that you have to do is you have to say npm init. Now the reason why we are able to use this npm command, because I just mentioned that npm comes with Node, right? And here you can see that we indeed have npm installed here. Okay, so that's why we are able to execute the init command using the npm reference. So when I say npm init, it is going to ask us few questions that is related to our project. Like, let me pull this terminal a little up. Okay, so first it is asking for package name. So what is the name of the package? So package simply means that what is the name of your application. So you can say socialmedia.com, and then it is asking for version. Let's keep 1 at default, you can change it. And then description, I will simply say social media app. Hit enter. Entry point, keep it app.js. Test command, we are not going to provide any test command. No git repository. Keywords, nothing. Author, I will simply say code. Hit enter, and let's hit enter again, and it is asking if all of the mentioned data is okay. You just have to enter again, and now you'll notice that you got a package.json. Click it to open, and now here you can see all those details related to your project. It is, again, you can see here, it is asking me to update it. Hey, new minor version of npm available from this to this. So I'm going to update it later. Let me clear this terminal command. Okay, so this is your package.json. Now this is the JSON extension. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Well, it definitely appears like a JavaScript object, but this is not a JavaScript object. Here you can see that the key as well as the value, both of them are wrapped in the double quote. If you try to remove the double quote, then you will get a warning. So this is not a JSON file. JSON file is unique in itself, and we will see the use cases of JSON when we will go to MongoDB. Okay, and am I making some mistake? Yeah, definitely I was not closing the key with the same format. Okay, so this is package.json that keeps tracks of everything that is related to our project. Very soon, when we are going to install npm packages, you will see it will also keep track of all of the packages that we are using in our system, at least we are using in our applications. Okay, so yeah, let's now go ahead and try to understand how to use npm. So the next thing that we have to do is to head over to npmjs.com. npmjs.com consists of hundreds of thousands of amazing modules related to npm that we can use in our project. So right now I'm going to give you a very simple demo, and then probably in future, if we are going to develop an application, we will be using many npm packages in our projects. But for now, here I'm going to give you a very simple example. So just make a search for validator and click on the first link and let it load. So a library of string validators and sanitizers. So validator package allow us to validate if the given email is correct or not. Okay, this package helps us to figure out if given email is correct or not. Okay, and so the next thing that we have to do is we have to install it. So here you can see we are again using the npm command with this I flag and then the package name. So let's now go ahead and do it. So here I can say npm I validator. So right here, this command we want to run. Now when we run this command, what's it going to do? Well, it's going to go off to the npm servers. It's going to grab all of the code for that package, and it's actually going to add it into our application, and we will notice that when we run that command. So if I hit enter, now two things will happen. Let it happen and then I will explain you. In the meantime, keep focusing here in this package.json file. Looks like I'm not connected to internet. Let's quickly fix that. Yeah, so now here you can see our package.json got updated. We got a dependency object where it is clearly mentioned that we are using this validator package with this version, right? And again, it is asking me to update npm, which I'm going to do little. Now two things happened. One, we got a package-lock.json file, and two, we got a new directory, a node modules directory. Let's take a quick look at both. First up, node modules. This is a folder which contains all of the code for the dependencies we installed. So if I open this, here you can see we have a single directory called as validator. That's the package we installed. And if we open that, then it's all of the code for the validator package. Now the node modules directory is something we should not be manually editing. We should not go inside a validator and actually change these files. And we'll talk about that as we progress throughout the course and learn something more interesting about packages management. But for now, just remember that you never edit this node modules folder. This is automatically created by npm each time you try to install a new package, right? So please do not change anything in the node modules folder. No, you don't have to worry at all about this. Okay. So when it comes to working with node modules, it is just going to get generated and edited when we run npm install commands. So we use npm install and npm maintains this directory. And the same thing is true with package-lock.json. This is a file which contains extra information, making npm a bit faster and a bit more secure. It lists out exact versions of all of our dependencies as well as where they were fetched from. And we also have a SHA code, which stands for Secured Hashing Algorithm, making sure that we are getting the exact code that we got previously if we were to install a dependency again. So once again, this is also not the file that we should ever be editing manually. Okay, once again, this will also be maintained by npm. So we have our package installed, and when we run that command, it is also added to our package.json. So if you go to package.json, here you can see we have this dependency validator with the current version. So each time you install any package, it is going to appear here in this dependency object. Okay, so now let's use this package to understand how can we utilize, how can we leverage a code, a file or a module created by an engineer just like us, so that we do not have to reinvent the wheel. So let's now use validator. So here should I create a new file, or let's delete all of this. Okay, so the first thing that we have to do is let's head over to the documentation. So it is asking us, well, this is no ES6, this is ES6. I'm not going to use this import syntax yet because I haven't talked about it, but let's now make it very simple. Okay, so first thing is we have to require it again. Remember, require function. So now let's do it. So here I'm going to say const validator equals to require. How am I able to use this require? Because again, we already have installed this package as dependency. So we just have to mention its name, validator. Okay, and now whatever this function returns, it will be stored in this validator variable. So here I can use this validator, and I can say dot, and here we have all of the lists of methods that is accessible on this validator variable. Okay, and now here you can actually read documentations to understand that what are the things that you can check. So you can check equals, is after, alpha. Let's go with little bit easy. Is email looks good. So checks if the string is an email. Okay, so let's now check validator is email, and here I will try to provide like incorrect email. Yeah, I'll say a, not at the rate of, but I'll say lol_lol.com. Well, this is certainly not an email, so let's check is an email. And now if I try to console.log is an email, I should probably get not or false, because this returns the output in a boolean. Okay, so let's save this, and now if I say node app.js, it is returning us false. Okay, but if I make it clearly good, jack at sparrow.com, this is certainly a correct and valid email. Now I should get true. So did you see that? How using an npm package makes us easy to configure something in our application. We do not have to reinvent the wheel. Like if we go ahead and try to write the logic for creating this very simple thing, again we will be involving a lot of time and a lot of extra code that is already doable by installing a very simple validator package, right? So that is not going to be very favorable for us. Rather, use something that is already created and focus more on your project. Okay, now I want to show you one more very simple package just for fun, so that you become little comfortable working with npm modules. This is this superhero name library. So we are going to install this one, it will just generate a very random superhero name for us. And in the meantime it is installing. Let's quickly import it here. Superhero equals to require, and what is the name that we should be tagging? So this is superhero dash name dash library. Okay, so let's paste it here. Okay, and now on this superhero we can call a random, if I correctly remember, is the random method that is giving us a random superhero name. Yeah, superhero.random returns a random superhero name. Superhero.allNames returns an array containing all names. Wow. And then superhero.allNames, if you provide it an argument, it will return an array containing the name that starts with the mentioned letter. Okay. So, okay, let's try to do few of them. Superhero.random, I'll say const random superhero name and cl random superhero name, save it. So now if I say node app.js, it generated us a superhero name, Callisto. Let's try to run this file again and let's see what it gives us. Psylocke. I've heard of Loki but not Psylocke. And next one is superhero.allNames. So superhero.allNames, what does it return us? Let's see, an array probably. Yeah, an array of all the names. Alright friends, so this was all about modules. Let's now move forward, and from now onwards we are going to do some real things, like we are going to talk about client server architecture. We are going to understand what is a server. We are going to build a server the node way, and then we are going to enhance that server, and then we are going to talk about Express.js. Okay, so yeah, lots of amazing things coming ahead. So if you haven't subscribed so far, what are you waiting for, man, or women, or ladies, or gents, whatever, just subscribe. And yeah, we are going to take all of our learnings to the next stage from the next video. See you there.